1933, in a quiet town in Bengal called Pakur, a wealthy landlord began screaming in the middle of the night. His fever burned so violently that his skin felt like fire, and within hours blood seeped from his eyes and mouth. By dawn, he was dead, and one whispered word froze the room: plague. Plague was not unheard of in Bengal, but something felt wrong. The outbreak had no trail, no other victims, no rats dying in the streets. If this was plague, why had it chosen only one man? The dead man was Tarakeshwar Sengupta, a powerful landlord with enemies and influence. 2 days before his illness, he had received a carefully wrapped box of sweets with a polite note wishing reconciliation. The sender was a young and educated doctor named Benoy Kumar Sarkar. At first, the gesture seemed civilized, even generous. Sengupta and the doctor had been locked in a bitter property dispute, and peace would have benefited both. But what if the gift was not peace, but preparation? When questioned, Dr. Sarkar appeared calm and composed. He admitted to sending the sweets but denied any ill intent, insisting he was a physician who saved lives, not ended them. His voice never shook, and that confidence nearly convinced the police. Nearly. One detective, Inspector Dhiren Mitra, noticed something unsettling. Sarkar did not seem surprised that plague was suspected, as if he had already rehearsed that possibility. Why would a doctor be so composed about a rare and isolated death? Inspector Mitra began asking different questions. Instead of asking about the gift, he asked about medical training and bacteriology. What did Sarkar know about infectious diseases, and how deeply had he studied them? The answers were chilling. Sarkar had trained at Calcutta Medical College and specialized in bacteriology. He understood how pathogens behaved, how they incubated, and how they could be transmitted without detection. But knowledge alone does not make a killer. So what pushed a trained doctor toward murder? A search warrant was issued, and officers entered Sarkar's private laboratory. What they discovered was not the clutter of a rural clinic, but the precision of a controlled experiment. Glass vials, labeled cultures, and handwritten notes lined the shelves. Among them was a vial marked with a Latin name, Yersinia pestis, plague bacteria, cultured, studied, and carefully preserved. Possessing bacteria was suspicious, but not illegal for research. The real question was whether it had left the laboratory. Could a disease be turned into a weapon without anyone noticing? The servants of the Sengupta household remembered something peculiar. The sweets looked ordinary, but tiny dark specks dotted their surface, like spice sprinkled unevenly. Sengupta had eaten 3 pieces, and no one else had touched them. Forensic analysis in 1933 was primitive, yet determined. Under the microscope, investigators identified traces of organic contamination consistent with plague bacteria. The infection had not been airborne, it had been consumed. This was no outbreak. This was delivery. The idea was horrifying. Someone had transformed food into a silent weapon, targeting a single victim without causing panic in the town. Was this the world's first precision biological murder? The trial electrified British India. Newspapers called it murder by science, and crowds packed the courtroom. People wanted to see the man who had turned medicine into a method of killing. The defense argued that plague was common and coincidence was possible. How could anyone prove deliberate infection? Disease, they insisted, cannot testify. But Sarkar's own notebooks did. They detailed months of experiments with bacterial cultures and observations on incubation periods. One entry described food as an effective delivery mechanism, noting that symptoms would appear natural and suspicion minimal. Was it scientific curiosity, or was it rehearsal? The motive was painfully human. Sarkar and Sengupta had once been business partners, and the dispute had left the doctor financially humiliated. Reputation damaged, pride wounded, he had chosen not just revenge, but perfection. When asked whether he believed he would escape justice, Sarkar reportedly answered with chilling confidence. Plague deaths were common, he reasoned, and no one would suspect science hidden in sweets. The only error, it seemed, was writing it down. The jury deliberated briefly before returning a guilty verdict. In June 1934, Benoy Kumar Sarkar was executed at Bhagalpur Central Jail. He was 38 years old. Yet the execution did not end the fear. Colonial authorities quietly reviewed laboratory regulations across India. Medical institutions tightened oversight on bacterial cultures. The case became a warning whispered in academic circles, because Sarkar had proven something terrifying. With enough knowledge and patience, disease could be directed like a blade. What unsettles experts even today is not the violence, but the method. This was not rage or impulse. It was research, planning, calculation, and execution. He approached murder the way a scientist approaches a cure. He experimented, refined, and perfected. Does that make the crime colder than any act of physical brutality? The Pakur case is often cited as one of the earliest examples of deliberate pathogen use against an individual. It forced governments to recognize that knowledge itself can become a weapon. Medicine, in the wrong hands, can mutate into murder, and that leads to an uncomfortable question. What truly stops such crimes today? The story of Pakur is not just about one criminal. It is about the fragile boundary between science and conscience. When knowledge grows faster than ethics, what protects society? If you like our video, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.